a conversation around the topic of how has theatre opened up ways of staying connected for older people in our community during lockdown. And the stimulus for our discussion is a recent event by the Royal Exchange's young company and elders company, Connect Fest. The coronavirus has had an enormous impact on everybody. I know for myself, I live in a block of flats for retired people, and often we think we're in Fort Knox. But there are groups of people, of course, who are more disadvantaged than others. Older people have had a tremendously difficult time during this whole business of the virus. Not only are some of them more vulnerable to infection, but issues about their ability to understand or use the internet, their anxieties over groceries, their anxieties over their medication, being locked down and away from friends and relatives, particularly, I understand from my own situation, our grandchildren. And part of this discussion is to try and look at this issue of the lockdown. In a recent Age UK article published in May, new research from the Office of National Statistics showed that nearly 6.4 million people aged 70 and over in Great Britain are worried about the effect that the coronavirus is having on them right now, with 2.9 million of them saying their mental health has been affected. Of course, many older people live alone, which has increased the level of their anxieties and made them even more vulnerable in terms of their well-being and in terms of their mental health. Traditionally, of course, the theatre has played a very important part in connecting people and in helping to combat loneliness and isolation. But our buildings have been closed. And it means that companies have had to find new and innovative ways to continue to do their work. And at this moment, we don't even know how our industry is going to survive. So our discussion is going to be between these people. Farrell Curran, Head of Cultural Partnerships, Age of Creativity Festival Director, Age UK. Andy Barry, who is the Director of the Company of Elders, and three graduate members of the Company of Elders, Glyn Treharne, Jacquie Long, and Bernard Leach, and one current member of the Elders Company, Anne Cole. I'm going to ask you each to speak not for too long a time on this subject, your experiences really around this subject. And then I hope we're going to have questions from people who are watching. So people who are watching can leave comments in the comment section of YouTube, or you can ask us questions through Twitter at RX Theatre, or join the conversation through the hashtag RXConnect. So Farrell, we'll start with you, shall we? Perhaps you could start us off with your thoughts on how lockdown is affecting older people.
Gosh, that's a huge question. I suppose from my point of view, I work for Age UK, so I try to support local Age UKs to inject creativity into their service delivery across the whole of the country, but particularly in Oxfordshire as our national exemplar of best practice. So one of the profound differences that's happened since lockdown for me is that I often struggle to sometimes connect with those local service delivery managers and try to advocate for the role of the arts at a local level. But right now, from around March, I've been perceived as a frontline worker. So in terms of creativity on the ground, people have stopped seeing it as an add-on, an extra, something nice to have, into something that's integral to quality of life and bringing people joy every day. So in addition to food parcels, it's been about how do we get that creativity to those individuals who are at home particularly those who are offline and not able to access the wealth of stuff that's going on digitally. The other big thing that's happened in my world is that I normally manage a humongous festival across the whole of England, celebrating creativity for, with and by older people for the whole of May. So that's the 1st to the 31st of May. But we've had to dismantle the whole festival, which, like yourselves in the theatre, it's been absolutely devastating to have to cancel all of our events and move as much online as possible. But of course, not forgetting those people who are at home and who are isolating and who don't have any access to the internet. And so what we've started doing is trying to work in a partnership with organisations across the country to try and meet that gap and help people to have creativity in their lives, even if they can't get out the door. And that's part of the reason why I'm here today, is because I've been working in partnership with the Royal Exchange on a project that's been part of a pack, a creative pack, a printed pack that's gone into people's homes. So yeah, just trying however way that we can, new innovative ways of getting out there to people. Thank you.
Good, thanks very much, Caris. We'll come back, perhaps we'll come back to some more details about the festival when you were able to work through May, but we'll move on now. And can I go to the elders first? So Glyn, can I start with you? Would you like to tell us your experiences so far? I don't think you were involved in Connect Fest, were you?
No, I wasn't involved in Connect Fest, but I was very impressed, you know, because it was something new. I've been an elder since January 2015, and I actually joined because a couple of friends was in the elders and they talked about it and said, oh, you must join. I'd been in something with quarantine the year before, which was summer, which was I enjoyed. So I came along to a taster session in December 2014 and I thought, wow, I'll have to really up my game if I'm going to join these elders. And so I applied to the elders, I got in. And one of the things that I remember putting in the application was I wanted to be challenged, I wanted to be outside my comfort zone. And that's one of the things that we do when we're in the elders. And the impact it's had on me, all my life, really, if I look at a personal point, it's being told, you can't do that. But when you're in elders, you're being told, you can do that. And I thought, well, go for it. And there was so much support, both by the Royal Exchange and Andy, who was leading the elders, but by the whole company. And so you felt safe. And during that time, we used to fill in forms, perhaps at the end of a session, like there was sessions of 8 sessions. And so at the end of each, what we call terms, you filled in this form. And I thought, you know, what was your mental health like? And I thought, it's just the same. But then it began to improve. I gained in confidence. So that's what I come away with, being part of the elders and about the theatre. And when we became graduates, there was more opportunities opened up, like with the leaders and doing different things. And I started a newsletter. And during lockdown, when it started, it was something new and it was a bit frightening. But it didn't seem so bad starting off. But there's been some dips in between because it's gone on for so long. But the power of the theatre is being still connected. And Jacquie and I, who is on the panel, we got together and said, oh, because we'd not heard about this Zoom. What is Zoom? And said, let's see what it's about. And so Jacquie said, oh, what do you think about including other people? Why don't you set up a meeting? I didn't know how to set up a meeting, but when Jacquie tells me to do something, I do it. So that's how the coffee morning started off. And there's been such a success, and other people have joined in. And as has been said before, Bernard has been such a great contributor to it. And then with the leaders, we've had Phone a Friend, which is connecting. At the moment, it's just a pilot, connecting with other elders and creating a story. So then, looking ahead, it's about, this is something else that can be part of, you know, the elders program going forward. And it's connecting to people that don't physically have access to the Royal Exchange. So like Connect Fest is something that you can look at and say, well, that is something for the future. And one of the things that I always say, I'm 76 now, but I still, and you know, it's difficult times and we don't know what's going to happen. It's very uncertain, but I still get up and think I have a future. And so many other things I could say about my connection with the Royal Exchange, but during lockdown, it's been vital. Oh, I
think it's an accepted fact, isn't it, that the whole lockdown has sort of asked us all to look at ourselves in very different ways and how we relate, just not to each other, but to how we relate to the world. So, I mean, this gathering of the elders, which is a company in itself and has worked together for a while, still continuing to work together is one, I think, of the great advantages of this process. Jacquie, do you want to continue on that line, or do you wish to set off on a different tangent? You were in Connect Fest, weren't you?
Yes, I was. I would first like to say that I agree with so much of what Glyn said. And at the beginning of lockdown, I didn't want to believe, actually, that it was happening, because I felt as if everything was suddenly going to be taken away from me. Because although I have a lot of contact with my family, the Royal Exchange has become very, very important in my life. I mean, I'm up there once or twice a week, and as Glyn has pointed out, I like organising things. But as soon as the lockdown started, we had quite a lot of communication from the theatre, and then Connect Fest, which was going to be something that was done in the Den at Lee with some of the young company and some of the elders company. Obviously, that was stopped straight away, and a lot of people were very upset. But then it was taken onto Zoom, and it was a totally new experience for everyone. Part of the challenge being getting familiar with how to use Zoom. And that was quite a challenge, but it became quite exciting getting to grips with all these new things that we were doing online. And Connect Fest brought everybody together. Whole groups, small groups, and we weren't losing contact. The theatre was still there, and that was just so uplifting to be able to do that. One of the things that's important to me about the Royal Exchange is going there and actually meeting so many new people from different parts of life and mixing and seeing talent, different talents. And like Glyn, there were a lot of things that I thought that I couldn't do. But, and one of the things I thought I couldn't do was write anything. So when we have Elders Mondays, which have workshops, and one of them is a writing workshop, I wouldn't go because I thought that I couldn't write. But working for Connect Fest, where we were set some writing tasks, creating characters, writing letters to other characters, I thought, I can do this. And I really felt quite proud of myself. And because I've been at home at leisure, it's made me sit down and think, right, well, I think I'm going to write something today. I've been going out for a daily walk, and after a couple of weeks, I thought, I'm going to start recording what I see. And I've just been writing a couple of sentences about what I've seen. And Bernard has asked us to put a diary together from some of the activities that we do in the Zoom coffee group. And I've done something on nature, and other people are doing a variety of things, gardening, poetry, and it's all going to be put together in a 1-hour podcast, I believe. And that's been really good fun doing that. The Zoom group has, I think it's about 26 people, and it is open every day from 11 o'clock, just for 40 minutes. And people can just pop in with their 11s and sit and chat. And we've been we had gardener's question time. We've had people reading poems that they've read, people telling us about books, paintings, sharing stories. Most of it is fun. We laugh a lot. And also we've shared some quite intimate moments. And I think in the last 11, 12 weeks, there's only been about 4 days that we haven't been able to open. And that has kept everybody connected, and it's kept me really positive and happy. But I can't wait to
Very
get
good.
back.
Yes. You mentioned the intergenerational work, which the elders have taken part in before, haven't they, with the young company? So that project that was going to be set up just before we were all shut down would have been another intergenerational project. But when you went on to Zoom, it still was an intergenerational project, wasn't it? Because the young company were involved.
Yes.
So, and you were also in Connect Fest, weren't you? So
I was. Yes. I thoroughly enjoyed being involved. And the fact that I was working with young people, for a person of my age, I'm 82, it was absolutely magical. You know, that big gap seemed to lessen, and I felt as though I had a focus, because when you get to over 80, you kind of begin to think, well, there's nothing really much left. But then a new beginning starts, and these are young people involving you, and you're becoming involved with them. So it's like rebirthing. I know I'm perhaps getting a bit over the top with that, but it is how I felt. And I was devastated at first because I'd made all new friends in the elders' company, and they were all new, and I thought, I'm going to lose all my contacts. But that didn't happen, because Andy and the rest of the staff got all the Zooms going, and you know what? We have developed such wonderful friendships from that. It's absolutely magical. And my fear now is that I don't want the theatre not to open. So like I am now grasping at straws in a way. I will do anything to reassure everybody that I'm sure we're no more in danger than in the pubs, etc., etc., etc. But my experience also during this pandemic was, in addition to how I felt, my husband is blind. So there wasn't very much on the television, because only the old programs, because we have to have audio described for people who are blind. So I'd just like to make that point if this continues. But all I will say is I've got so much admiration and thanks for the staff of the Royal Exchange, because prior to the pandemic, that was a place I felt I could go to at this age in the city centre, see a wonderful show and be safe. The whole atmosphere of the place, you know, the cafe, the bar, was all there, and you felt safe. There's not many places in the city centre where older people can feel welcome and safe in that respect. And for that, I thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Anne. Another point that's come out of that, and I think Farrell alluded to it earlier, about the notion that older people do nothing but sit about and don't do anything at all, don't do any activity. And unless you are incapacitated in some way, this is not so as far as the elders are concerned. And in terms of the breadth of experiences you've all had, and also the learning that's gone on with you, you know, Jacquie mentioned, you know, learn new skills and all of that. And this opening up of your experiences, I think, has been wonderfully part of the work you've been doing with the elders, I think. Bernard, would you like to continue?
Yes, I'd like to make a distinction between the personal effects of the virus and the the effects on the groups I'm involved in. At a personal level, I was shocked to find I was an extremely clinically vulnerable individual, which means a different sort of setting altogether. And I suppose that I've generally, I don't know whether it's fair to say this, quite enjoyed it, because I'm mobility impaired, so I don't particularly like going on holidays. So staying where I am is nothing new to me, and I've really enjoyed that part of it, oddly. But on the group level, I'm involved in several groups, of which the elders is one. So I'm involved in Men in Sheds, and we're having talks about how we can possibly open that up now, because that's mainly targeted at older men. And with Chorlton Good Neighbours, I'm also involved in, we moved our history group online, and it was tremendous success. The first one we did about a couple of weeks ago was about the history of the Manchester Bee. And the one we're doing next week is on the early life, the early years of the Beatles. So quite varied stuff. But what surprised me is how many older people had managed to get on Zoom. I mean, I'd never have expected some of them to have made it, but if needs must, people will get there. Seems to be the conclusion on that. So as regards the elders, I think Glyn was being a bit modest. His quizzes are a thing of beauty. And we're going to record his on Friday to be part of our series of sort of lockdown diaries. And I think it'll be a total hoot, as they always are. I think we're doing something like Belgium film posters, which is about as esoteric as you can get, but it'll be interesting to see how he got. And I hope our team manages to win eventually. So overall, it's been really, really good, because I found I do Zooms with family and friends, and whilst they're good, they're kind of emotionally a bit charged. With the elders, I know people there and I know them quite well, but it's much more relaxed. It's a really relaxing, it really is like a coffee morning, and you're just welcome in it, and it's been great. I really enjoyed that.
Bernard, apart from the history group moving on to the internet, do you want to say anything more about the work with, say, the groups like the Good Neighbours? Because that is, I know in Chorlton here, there's a huge focus on how of facilities provided for older people to take part in activities there. So do you want to say anything more about these other groups that you've been involved with?
Yes, they've struggled. They've struggled because you can't really go and visit people easily. You can't have group activities very easily. So they're doing a lot of phone-based talk, and I think they've got a well-being group that meets on Zoom that they've got going as well. But I think it's been very, very difficult for them, and they've done a wonderful job keeping everybody informed and contacted, and if they need any help, they'll provide it. And they've been involved in food runs and all sorts of things like that. So they've adapted. But I think the thing that people really want is something like the Thursday morning coffee morning, where you'd have 60 or 70 people come. I think a lot of people really miss that. And we can't forget, there are a lot of older people who haven't got internet, haven't necessarily got smartphones, and can't do all this. And they're the ones, I think, that are finding it most difficult of all. And to get things, face-to-face meetings going again, when it's safe to do so, will be really, really important.
And I know one of the great provisions of the Good Neighbours is the exercise classes, which happen, I think, 3 times a week, or used to before all of this happened. How have the rest of you been keeping up with your physical well-being, if you like? Jacquie, how have you been managing?
Well, I go out for a walk every day, as I mentioned earlier, but I also I used to go 3 times a week to a dance exercise class, and the teacher has moved online and runs it from her back garden. So I get into my Lycra, I'm only doing it twice a week, and clear the kitchen, and she streams it live on FaceTime, and it's just a ball. It's really funny because you're all on your own, trying not to hit the cupboards in the kitchen. So yes, I'm keeping pretty fit.
Yes. I know this conversation is centered around the activities of the elders and the elders company. But it seemed to me to be also an interesting point that while some people have been locked down and have happy to care for themselves, that their thoughts have been going outward to other people who are in a similar situation, which is a good thing. Can we come to you now, Andy, who you are the director of the Company of Elders. So perhaps you could give us a little background to it and, well, anything else you want to say, really.
It's been really interesting, actually, listening to people's insights. I think in terms of the programme that we have at the Exchange, when we first went into lockdown, I kind of thought, like, what is the point of the programme? Like, what are we sort of here to do? And as a theatre as well, I guess we've been thinking about that. And I think for me, I mean, it's probably lots of things, but I think in that moment, it kind of boiled down to a big part of what we do is about connecting people. And also a big part of theatre and storytelling is about helping people understand the world around them and themselves as well. But it seemed like those things were going to be really important during, you know, as we went into lockdown during March. And also, I think a big part of the programme is about kind of encouraging people's own creative journeys and unlocking people's creativity, which might have, you know, been asleep for a while or maybe has never really been tapped into sort of properly. And I think that's what that's what we can kind of offer, but by bringing in sort of professional artists. And, you know, a lot of the stuff we've been hearing about is about kind of, I think, building people's confidence to empower them to be creative and do their own stuff, really. And so I don't think at the beginning it wasn't about kind of outcomes that we could create that people could kind of consume because they were kind of, you know, at home on their own. It was about how we can use the digital technology to get that connectivity and to bring people together and to take part in stuff. So we tried to move as much as the programme online as possible. So our Elders Monday workshops, which are public workshops that we normally run at the theatre, we've now successfully moved all of that online. So that's 2 days a month where we have a series of workshops that people can book onto. It's not the same as being together, but it's a really good second best. And actually there's some really interesting things that have come out of it. So we've got people accessing that programme who don't normally come to the theatre because they live too far away or they can't travel in. So, you know, I think in terms of looking forward, there's real benefits to this sort of way of working. We've also continued our Elders Company sessions, which Anne is part of, the Elders Leaders, which is a volunteer based programme where graduates of the company can kind of get involved in a much more active way, helping us kind of shape and run the programme. Those sessions have continued. But I think one of the biggest successes for me really has been seeing how those leaders have sort of become artistic and cultural activists, really. And, you know, they've set up these coffee mornings, which we're not facilitating that. You know, I've offered a bit of support, a bit of technical support early on with Zoom. I've dropped into some of those coffee sessions, but, you know, there's no way that I would have had the capacity to lead a daily creative session in that way, but they've done it. And, you know, what Jacquie didn't tell you about the diary project that Bernard's kind of kicking off as well, and I know Glyn's involved in too, is that you know, they're learning new digital skills, they're editing films together, they're probably not that far off producing a piece of work, which I just think that's kind of brilliant, really. So they're kind of all the sort of positives. I think personally, and I know it's come up for us in our sessions as well, and it's come up here today, that the challenge has been about thinking about those people who don't have the equipment or the confidence to access the online stuff or the internet connections. And, you know, I think moving forward, I think we really seriously need to look at that kind of digital uplifting of people, because it's just not fair, actually. We set up a phone project for people that we were already in contact with, who I knew couldn't access any of the online stuff. And I knew that I couldn't do all the phoning all the time. So 9 of the leaders paired up with 9 participants, and again wanted it to be a creative project, so it was a story-based project. But I really hope that some of those, you know, people moving forward get upskilled and or get equipment or access to Wi-Fi, so that if we're ever in this situation again, you know, there aren't people left behind. And also, it might not be a massive global pandemic. It might just be that as we age, there's periods in our life where you can't get out of the house as much, or you're recovering from illness, and actually, you know, in that situation, yes, you might be recovering and not be able to engage at 100%, but you might still be able to take part in a creative drama class online, or, you know, in Chalk Good Neighbours or Men in Sheds online, or, you know, and actually if you've not then got the skills of the equipment, you know, that's a kind of double hit then, isn't it? It's like you're recovering, you're unwell, and then you're also completely cut off. I would argue kind of unnecessarily, really. So that would be my hope moving forward.
Andy, both you and Farrell mentioned you were in collaboration before the virus hit. Do you want to say a little bit about that? And is it in sort of in the air still, or is it something you'll come back to? Do either of you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so maybe if I talk about what we were doing, and then Farrell, you maybe pick up kind of how it sort of developed. So Farrell had an idea of working with a poet and some older people to develop poetry writing skills, really, around a very sort of specific idea of song lines, which were poems that kind of trapped a moment in your life, or a kind of thread of your lived experience. So Anne took part in the project as well. I think there were 9 or 10. We put together a group of 9 or 10. They met with the poet. They created their own poetry, and our idea was that those poems would be maybe recorded or presented as part of an event which we had planned in May, which obviously subsequently got cancelled. And so Farrell, do you want to kind of explain what happened next?
Yeah, so it was kind of at that moment when everything was being dismantled and cancelled, and everything was feeling quite difficult, because we had so many amazing events that were planned for May as a celebration. And a lot of people had spent a lot of time gearing up towards the festival as a way of kind of showcasing what happened throughout the rest of the year. And so it just felt as though it was such a shame that a lot of the work that had gone into this project just wouldn't have the chance to be performed and shared in the way that we intended. But then an opportunity came up for us to kind of reimagine the work into a poetry anthology that then has been put into a physical pack, so a printed pack that is part of a wider creative pack that we've put together. And we've been piloting these packs, these creative packs, with 1,000 older people who are shielding with no digital access whatsoever. So these are very different types of people than the people who are on the screen today. Because it's difficult when you use the word older people or elders, because it is 50% of the population. So we're looking at anybody who's over 50. So there are lots of people who are very active, engaged, up for being part of the community, confident, and able to be kind of brought back into some of the activities that people have lost along the years. But there are a huge number of people who've got really complex health problems, caring responsibilities, housing issues, all those kind of things, who just, with every will in the world, just can't be joining in with some of the Zoom activities that are going on, even with Wi-Fi, even with training, even with a laptop. It's just not, it's not possible. So we have to come up with multiple ways of trying to deliver something amazing for people in every different point of their lives. Because it could well be that there are people who can go on Zoom and can go on WhatsApp, but can't always be accessing those kind of digital programs. Because people are complex and have difficult lives and things change all the time. So having these kind of multiple platforms of being able to engage in creative activities, it makes sense all the time, but it has just become more profoundly important since we've been in lockdown. So this pack that we've put together, we have the poetry anthology, which is written for, with and by older people, for people who are in lockdown, who might be looking for just a little bit of inspiration in their day. The anthology is alongside 2 other art form based packs. So we have one which is around reading for pleasure. So that's supporting people who may well not have many books at home, who might want to engage in stories and reading at home, and trying to lock them into something locally. That's supporting them with understanding where to buy books, how to listen through the radio, that kind of thing. And then we've also got a pack that we worked on with 64 million artists, which is 31 creative challenges. So the anthology is a huge part of that pack. What we've included in the pack is postcards. So if people have got a creative response, they can write it on the back of a postcard and send it to us, so that we can somehow start a creative conversation, albeit by post. And we've done this as a pilot in one particular area, and the area that we've worked in it has complex health outcomes. It's an area of high deprivation, difficult transport. So it could well be something that we end up using in the future, even when we're not in lockdown. And it's just an extra tool, an extra resource for us in our string of opportunities for people to engage with at home. So what we're hoping is the pack will then evolve. It could well be that we can open that pack up to people across the whole country, across the whole of England. That's the aim of ours. And then potentially to have some kind of exhibition of people's work as a way of boosting confidence and supporting people to maybe go to a local exhibition of people's work that people have produced through lockdown. Because we recognise that there'll be a lot of people who are absolutely desperate to get back out there. Like the people here today, if as soon as the theatre doors are open, you're going to have a queue around the block for people to go back in. But for some people, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be a real challenge, not just about physically getting people out and about, but confidence. Because that's been shattered for a lot of people who had only just built up the confidence to come out in the first place. So as we gear towards winter, which is a very difficult time for lots of people who've got physical impairments to go out and about, it's just going to add another difficulty. So anything we can do with creativity as a tool in which to support people to feel more connected, and to have an asset to go and give as well. It's not just simply about us sending the pack in and giving people some activities to do. It's about encouraging people to perceive themselves as creative makers, that they can contribute something back into the community and go and see themselves alongside other people who are creative as well. So we do hope that these creative packs will have a legacy beyond this COVID lockdown, and it could also move into lots of other streams. So for instance, poetry packs for the telephone, we're looking at that at the moment, because we recognise that there's been a huge influx of volunteers who are really keen to connect with other people on the telephone right now. But we also recognise that the people who are the volunteers are often just as lonely, isolated, disconnected, lacking in a creative environment at home as the people that they've volunteered to phone up. So having some kind of creative poetry pack that we can give to volunteers who are on the phone gives each person on the phone something interesting to talk about. So they might not be able to get out and about during their day, but they do have something really inspiring to talk about on the phone when they get the chance to. So yeah, so we're kind of trying to move past the horror, the disappointment, the upset of all the things that we've had to cancel, and try and reimagine them into something that isn't just a kind of sticking plaster for COVID, but could well be one of the many ways that we adapt the way that we work to reach out to people who couldn't have taken part before, who now may be able to take part in the future. So yeah, I think
we had Sorry. We had a question about sharing an example of the packs as something that may happen in the future. I think you've detailed quite substantially what those packs are. I'm not sure whether the question was about physically accessing these packs or not, but is that possible?
Well, we certainly have the PDF. So if you are someone who's online, then if it's something that Andy might be able to share through networks afterwards that people can easily open and download. But also if people do want to pack, then it might well be that we can try and sort something out for people locally. Yeah, it's just trying to get it out there in whichever way.
While we're on this subject of collaboration and the wider impact of the work that's being done, Andy, can you tell us a bit about the trip to Japan was that 2018? Was it? How did that come about, and what was the outcome of it?
So I went to Japan in 2018 with the British Council. As a kind of study trip, really, to find out what they're doing there and what's happening there, and to share some of the practice that's happening here in the UK, but particularly in Manchester. So Manchester's an age-friendly city, and Greater Manchester's the UK's first age-friendly citywide region, and the Mayor of Manchester has the leader of Tameside Council is kind of the lead for age-friendly work across Greater Manchester. So there's a real emphasis on, thinking about how our region and city can be a great place to grow older, really, which, is in all of our, whatever age we are, is in all of our interests to really think about that, not just in terms of cultural access, but in terms of infrastructure, health and social care, and transport. So that's what that trip was about. We've continued a dialogue with companies that we met in Japan. We had some very exciting plans, which unfortunately have been cancelled and postponed as a result of the current lockdown. But hopefully, we might be able to pick something up there in the future. But I think that, it would be really interesting to see what happens to international collaboration, not just in terms of arts and ageing, but just generally in our sector, and moving forward, in terms of the two great things, the two big things, pick my words carefully, that have happened recent years with Brexit and with the COVID pandemic. It will be very interesting to see what international working kind of looks like, really.
Mm-hmm. Bernard, somebody has asked you if you could say a little bit more about Men in Sheds.
Yeah. Well, the one I know most about is South Manchester Men in Sheds, which is on the Merseybank estate in Chorlton. And it's in an old shop that we got given by Southways Housing. And it's been really, really successful. But the idea of a Men in Sheds, and by the way, our Men in Sheds, a third of the members are women. It started off in Australia with a realization that older men were getting quite depressed and quite a lot of suicides, apparently. So they started this off based on the rather stereotype phrase, women talk face to face, men talk shoulder to shoulder, which I don't think is a gender issue. I think there is a gender difference between people on this. That some people will go to coffee with each other and talk, and others will be much more likely to talk if they're doing something together, like making something or mending something or having a game of snooker or whatever it is. So that's the idea of it, that it gets older men involved in things that they've done before and maybe they're at a loss. And certainly, with the older men coming to our shed, there are several whose wives have died, who've been left on their own, and they're suddenly being reinvigorated by the technical skills that they've got and sharing it with each other. I mean, the chair just behind me, I upholstered that through the skills of other people and reconstructed it through the skills that I learned at the Men in Sheds. And we're really desperate to open it up. But if you want to find out any more about it, there is a Facebook page, South Manchester Men in Sheds, which has got full details and loads of photos on it. But it's a very, very good thing. And it's not, as I say, not just for men, it's a community initiative, and we're engaged in bike projects and woodworking projects, all sorts of things like that.
And there are others, aren't there, across Manchester?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, there are others across Manchester. Mainly they're based in small towns where I think there are more space, and there aren't that many in inner city areas. So I think whilst we're not unique, we're one of very few that are in the inner city area, city areas. Yeah.
Can I go back to the two of you who took part in Connect Fest and ask what was the outcome of that event? Because we watched 5 episodes through that week, didn't we? And we all went to the festival at the end. But for you participants, what was the outcome? Anne, you want to say so?
For me personally, it revived my confidence, because I was losing my confidence because I'm an outgoing person. And to become involved, as I said previously, and to see the faces of people and interact with them, and to share the joke, a little joke and laugh. That was the most important thing for me. And it was something to focus upon. And being very flippant, it was a reason to get up and put your lippy on. So, it gave you a reason to get up, get changed. And a lot of people say, oh, no, I can't be bothered. But that gave me a reason to get up and get ready to kind of go out to rehearsals, even though they were on the Zoom. That's how I benefited from it. And also the interaction with the young people.
Jacquie, you want to add to that?
More or less the same, really. I think it delivered connection, and that was what I really needed at that particular time. It motivated me to get up. It motivated me to become more competent using Zoom. And it was just wonderful to see the young people there and to interact with them. And it kept me going. And yes, it made me wash my hair and blow dry it.
And put your lippy on.
And find something nice to wear on the top. You just don't see the bottom, do you? And it meant I felt that I was still valued. The theatre valued us, and that was good. It made me feel good. So it's good for my mental health.
Andy, there's been a question. What do you think theatres and theatre artists can do as we emerge from the lockdown? Is there anything you can?
Wow, that's
sum up from your
I think there's probably millions of things that we can do and will do. I think in terms of kind of where I sit in the programme I'm sort of leading, I'm very much thinking about, I think in the very immediate short term, there needs to be a real level of kind of kindness and understanding, because we are all going to emerge out of lockdown at different rates and in different ways and with different anxieties. And I think some people will just bounce straight back in and want to kind of, kind of very much be like, it's fine now, it's kind of done. And I think there'll be other people that will be much more cautious. Farrell's already kind of mentioned, there are already a lot of older people and people generally in society living socially isolated lives. So, I think there's opportunity there for artists to kind of address some of that. I think in terms of our programme, there's also, I'm really interested in thinking about how this, digital technology that we've been using, we can continue some of that actually. There's potentially a place for online workshops which kind of democratize, I think, it's not then just about the people that can get into our building and make that journey from wherever they come from in Greater Manchester. I guess the challenge will be about how we upskill people or make sure that we're reaching the right bits of people. But I think, there's opportunity there. and I guess listening as well, listening to what audiences want, and you know, and supporting audiences to come back to exciting work and to work that's still really artistically robust, I guess would be my kind of, yeah, very of the spontaneous responses.
Farrell, what are the challenges for you when all of this is over? How are you going to pick up your work? I mean, apart from the support you've been given through, you know, through online services and stuff, but how do you think you're going to pick up?
Yeah, so we've gone through a bit of a journey, much as everybody else. That kind of, we can't do it how we've always done it. And we already thought we were being innovative and challenging the status quo before. And now we're being forced into a kind of a world in which everything is changing so quickly, we don't quite know where to pin our hat. So yeah, so we're kind of, I think it's almost feeling like this is, I hate to say it, new normal, but this kind of feeling comfortable in the uncomfortable as we're just changing and evolving lots. From a service point of view, I hate to call it a service because as artists, we don't feel like it's a service, but this kind of entity in which we engage with people. I think if you look at other similar services, so those working in physical activity or reaching out to people through, I don't know, carer services or social care or GP or health or whatever. The word that I'm hearing a lot of is around this blended approaches. So it's kind of, well, we can't all physically get into a room together at the moment. So we're coming up with all of these other kind of multiple ways of connecting and trying to overcome things. And it feels like once we're able to go back to all being in a room together, there's quite a lot of people who probably don't want to for a variety of reasons. And so having these parallel points of contact are probably something that's going to be for the future. And so it might well be that people physically want to get back into a room as was before, but it might be that there's also an opportunity to do digital things and telephone things and postal things. And it's going to be a challenge for the people who are delivering to be able to manage those expectations, because I'm sure Andy can say how much energy and work and effort it's taken to putting everything online, to then somehow thinking about doing those two programs in parallel is like a minefield and resource heavy. But I do think the expectation of the public will be that there will be more than what was on offer before in terms of connecting with people, which is just a good thing, particularly from my point of view. I mean, for years, I've been trying to get over the conundrum of how do we connect with people in their own homes when they are housebound, and it's been really challenging. But of course, when we're all housebound, suddenly it becomes more urgent and there's more response, collective response. So I think from my point of view in trying to develop a new world for the creative aging stuff that we do, it's going to be taking the best of what we've learned from lockdown, matching that with the best of what we had before and coming up with something that's new again. And so I think from my point of view, the chances are we're not going to be able to be as was until next year. And it'll probably be a year again after that before we start to kind of come out of the smoke and the rubble and feel like we have a sense of normality again. So as creatives, it's a wonderful time to be a part of this, because although we're nervous about the future and the funding, we're also at the forefront of coming up with all of these new ideas and being a part of the partnerships that and the new collaborations that are happening. So I can only talk for myself. I have moments of massive anxiety about what things are going to look like because I have no idea. But then the other half of me, the creative half, kicks in and thinks, oh, it's quite exciting about what could the new world look like. So yeah, so I'm not, I guess the short answer is I don't know, but it is exciting.
Glyn, now you have become an expert at Zoom. do you think your coffee mornings will continue when you're all free again to crash into the Royal Exchange and resume your activities? Do you think you'll continue your Zoom mornings?
Glyn, you're on mute. You just need to unmute yourself.
Unmute yourself, Glyn.
Yeah. Well, I had hoped that they'd continue at some level. We don't know when we're going to be all out of this. I mean, yeah, we're coming a little bit out of lockdown. So maybe we won't have the Zoom mornings every morning, but I'm excited by the innovations that we've had, like with Connect Fest, and as we say, reaching people who are not able to physically get into Manchester in the theatre. So that there's that point, there's the Connect thing. And as I said about in Leaders, we've been doing Phone a Friend, which is connecting with other people by phone. And that's sometimes the person that I was connected with didn't have access to a computer. They just had access to a telephone. It was kind of more difficult, but it could be done. So I think that those sort of areas have been really exciting to me. And to pick up on a point that Farrell was saying about what it's going to be like when we're able to go into the theatre, and some people are going to be more confident. And I think it's going to change, because when I was young, nobody hugged each other, nobody kissed each other, you know, that we're not very intimate with. And now, and I don't think it's just a theatrical thing, people are hugging and kissing all over the place. And so when I go back, I don't think it's going to be difficult, because some people love it. You know, you can't avoid it. They'll come up to you, throw their arms around you, and I'm thinking, well, no, I'm not so sure that that's what I want to do just yet. You know, it's lovely. It's lovely. I've not even hugged my daughter when she came on Sunday, because we're still sort of, you know, in that sort of area where we're not quite sure. So I think there's so many changes, but moving forward with the theatre, yeah, I think there's so many exciting things. And as you mentioned, Zoom, I never liked FaceTime. The thing about Zoom that I don't like, but maybe it's a good thing, you see yourself, don't you? And you think, oh my God, look at that neck. I want something that goes around my neck now to provide all this stuff here. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, there's lots of things about Zoom, but yeah, hopefully it'll carry on in some form or other.
What about your quizzes, Glyn? What about your quizzes?
Well, what do you think, Bernard? Do you think they could carry on?
I think, well, you said you're going to do them till August at least, so we've got them till then. I think they're fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Bernard. I appreciate it.
Did you say kissing all the flesh?
Say that again. In the flesh.
Did you say kissing all the flesh, or did I mishear you?
No, I didn't.
Sounds a wonderful
thing. All over the place. Yeah, no, yeah. I think I said when you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I might have said
term.
No, don't get too into it. No, kiss on the lips and all that sort of thing. I remember as a teenager, we saw the Russians. They were always hugging each other, and I thought that was unusual. You know, I'm not against hugging, don't get me wrong, but I think in this new normal, I'm going to avoid it a little bit more. So that's my contribution.
I think we're getting to the point where we're thinking about wrapping up now. So I should thank you all very much for taking part in this conversation. And Connect Fest is still available to be seen, isn't it? And is it still on the...
it's on the Royal Exchange website and also on our YouTube channel.
Right. And the next panel event is today at 5 o'clock. And that topic of discussion will be, how has the lockdown disproportionately affected disabled people across the UK? And what does theatre need to do to make space for this community in the future? So there's another panel discussion on Friday. So I think I can sign off now. Thank you very much to all of you for taking part this morning, and good health.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
You